From the far reaches of the Milky Way galaxy, it's Retro Nerd Girl with a film review for you. Today, I'll be reviewing the movie Aelita, Queen of Mars, released in 1924, starring Yuliya Solntseva, Igor Ilyinsky, and Nikolai Tsereteli, directed by Yakov Protazanov. Now the synopsis is: a married chief engineer of a Moscow radio station by the name of Loss daydreams of an affair with the Queen of Mars, Aelita. Now the story. Set in 1920 Russia, the film was loosely based on the book of the same name by Alexei Tolstoy. There are a few things to consider about the film upon viewing. Firstly, the title cards were originally in Russian, so the dialogue and the descriptions of what's happening in the film are lost in translation. And secondly, the film had been severely edited down, which may leave many viewers with a lot of questions, with a lot of plot pieces and points missing from the final product that we see today. So let me kind of sum up the story for you so you can get an idea of what I mean. The film starts out with a message from Mars that pretty much sends our main character, Loss, and his close friend and colleague, who is an engineer at the radio station, Spiridonov, into the desire to reach the planet in a rocket. Now, meanwhile, there's an evacuation center where Loss's wife, Natasha, is tending to the needy because of the war-torn world that they live in. And there is where we meet other characters. There is Gusev, who is an injured army soldier who falls in love with one of the staff members there. And then added to the mix, we have a swindling couple, Comrade Ehrlich and his wife Yelena, who are immorally trying to get more than their fair share of the rations and pretty much stealing at any chance that they can get. At the same time, Los is having these daydreams and imaginations of what it must be like on planet Mars. And he dreams up of this princess who is in love with him from afar. So she can see Earth and she's fallen in love with him. So there's a lot of different things that are going on in this story. So most people who see this film are in pretty much agreement that the film is extremely busy with several characters that are really excellently developed. They're fully developed. But there are many of them that play very minor roles in the outcome of the film. Each plot point stirs simultaneously just before barely converging together by the end. It's very interesting. It's definitely keeps you on your toes, and you have to watch it a few times to really even understand what the story is, to be quite honest. If you get it the first time, you're I will say you're a genius. I'll lay that on the table. You're a genius. But if you don't get it, don't be upset. Because it's a movie that really requires a lot of your patience. Now the pacing. The pacing at 1 hour and 20 minutes feels like 2 hours. There are only a few key moments of excitement, and you really have to pay attention as not to miss any detail. And I feel like the entire story makes a lot of sense by the end, and I completely understood it. But again, it's something you have to really, really pay attention to everything, and you have to maybe even watch it twice to really catch some nuances you may have missed the first time. Now, the challenge in the film. The challenge in the film is very murky because we have so many characters and so many little plot points that are twirling around. But I'll try to break it down as much as possible. The real struggle in the story, I suppose one of the main real struggles, is surviving the results of a war-ridden world. And that's the main challenge, the first main challenge, which results in many of the actions of the characters in the film. Now, the next challenge is Los's imagination in the film, where he spends a lot of time in his daydreams about Mars. And to be very honest, on Mars there's a whole nother plot going on there where Aelita is basically doing so many different things to try to get her way on the planet. There is a ruler of Mars who is a king. Well, I guess I'm not sure if she's the queen, a female counterpart, maybe his wife, I'm not sure. Well, they call her the Queen of Mars, and I suppose he's the King of Mars. She's trying to use all sorts of trickery so she can get a glimpse of Earth. And, she instantly falls in love with Los. And she craves the affection and the love that she sees him giving to his wife. Now, Aelita herself as a character is very, at first you think she's a sweet person. As the movie goes along, she reveals herself to be very manipulative and spoiled and power hungry. And she acts sort of as a polar opposite from Los's wife, Natasha, who is always giving to the needy and always being very giving to others. As a villain, I think she doesn't really pose much of a threat, but she is a very corrupt person with power. And she feels very alien within the context of the story, but exhibits many human qualities. The Martians themselves seem to be more corrupt, save for a few individuals. The empathy. Los is our protagonist, but the problem here is that he is not a very likable one. He is dreadfully suspicious of his wife while he's daydreaming of another woman. What the heck is going on here? It's a double standard. But it takes a turn for the worst when Comrade Ehrlich starts really pursuing Natasha. And even though Natasha's not really interested, there's so many little situations that really set Los onto this kind of vengeful path where he's upset at Natasha, who is I really feel is such a victim in this particular film. But she's dedicated and loyal and very forgiving as well. The main thing that really gets to me, which is sort of the thing that pushes the story along a lot, are these weird misunderstandings between Los and his wife. They never really get a chance to communicate with each other without this kind of misunderstanding going on. It's a plot piece I don't really like very much, but even they were doing that since 1924. So it's a common plot in movies. However, it's one of those things that if it wasn't for those misunderstandings, we really wouldn't have a story. Technical aspects. For me, the technical aspects of this film is the most interesting to me. Everything shot in the proposed real world is fine. All good stuff. It's all detailed and like a documentary style almost. But what leaves me in awe is really all of the scenes on Mars. We have all these really amazing costumes and headpieces. I just really loved all the designs for the costumes in particular, and all the hardware that was built into the costumes that were quite innovative and different. The sets too were also very expansive and built for the film's actors to really prance around and get into their characters. And it represents this very cold steel terrain that echoes their coldness to each other, their inhumanity in a way. And there's so many miniatures to convey the world of this cold yet advanced society that's scaped with very angular curves and linear constructs. And I was just in love with all of this. I could only imagine what it would have looked like in color. Performances. The performances are very hard to judge because I know that it's very difficult for people today to really accept the acting styles of past generations. It's very odd and different, but I think that this film was very good at giving us that balance between very dramatic moments and those extreme overacting moments that became a staple in silent films. So it kind of meets a middle ground, and part of the performance was in the makeup. And you see where some of the actors had special makeup to accentuate various expressions. At some point in the film, Los pretends to be his colleague Spiridonov. And what most people don't realize is that the actor who's playing Los is actually playing Spiridonov as well from the very beginning of the film. Now, the best part of the film for me was everything on Mars. I just loved all of the wacky ideas about this society in contrast to Earth. And I just wanted to know more. I totally would have been fine with a movie just about Mars. As a tale in itself, I really found myself enjoying it quite a bit. Now, the ending. The ending is very climactic with a large all-out war that left me completely mesmerized by the costumes and the choreography of action. It was pretty cool. It does kind of tie up everything really fast and snippy for that happy ending at the end of the film. And it does leave you scratching your head a little bit, why Los destroys his rocket ship plans at the end of the film. And after a few rewatches, I finally came to understand that this was his character arc. So even in 1924, we got a great character arc for our movie. Los's inability to deal with the reality of his war-torn country and the possible loss of his wife, leaving him for another man, is really what creates this fantasy of events that lead to his trip into Mars. He wakes up from his daydream and he discovers that the mysterious radio transmission was really an ad for some tires, of all things. And the obsession with building the rocket to travel into space was a great idea. And it's for a time when times are great. He realizes that he has to stay on Earth to face reality, where he is actually needed the most. Basically, to love his wife and to help rebuild his nation. And I thought that was really powerful. Like, wow, that is one heck of a realization, and I loved it. Now my wish list. I really wish that the film had fewer characters. It just was so complicated, all the different storylines they kept going on, and the story kept flipping back and forth, and you just didn't know what was going on. It just was a big undertaking to do that, as well as create this whole other world. I definitely commend the filmmakers for trying to juggle all of the story plots together to make this advanced story. Now the enjoyment. This is actually one of my favorite silent movies besides Metropolis. Metropolis is king for me. I love that film. But, I really love the attempt of the science fiction genre in the silent movie era, because this is where I can see the vision of other worlds at the dawn of filmmaking. It's just beautiful to see how far we've come, and even though the story is a little bit messy, there's a lot of charm to it. A great message in it too. Yes, there's a time to dream about bigger and better things, but then there's a time to deal with what's currently in front of you. That's what makes this story very timeless. It can speak for any time, any era, any country, any place. And, these movies can also be very richly enjoyed by anyone who sees it. Now, many people who watch this film in the modern age dismiss it. But I really feel that there are some of us who can really find great significance in it besides its obvious historical value. And for me, this film is just a beautiful time capsule of humanity at an earlier state, and yet, what timelessly rings true for all humans in their ability to love and to understand drama and imagine worlds beyond our reach. And when I look at this film, I think to myself, this is where it all began with movies like these, and it gave a lot of young kids, future filmmakers in the 40s and 50s, the creative gumption to believe that they could put their fantasies on screen. It inspired a generation of filmmakers after that. And it also inspired a lot of people who were interested in space exploration. So we owe a lot to films like this. My rating is a 7.4. Well, that sums up my quick spoiler-free review. This is Retro Nerd Girl signing off. Take care, movie lovers. I'm off to my next review.